Did you know you can support the Techology Show when you shop at Amazon.com? Become a friend of the show by starting your shopping at thetechologyshow.com/shop. It's Tuesday, October the 8th, 2013, live from rural Pickens, South Carolina, in Tony's old bedroom. I'm Matthew T.G.
That's so gross. I'm Heath Mulligan.
Yes, and I am Tony Casey in my old bedroom. Welcome to the Techology Show, a weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between. This is episode 220. So Heath,
Yeah.
even though the boys lost, you have to be proud of the Cowboys. They made it a game for the ages.
And I didn't even get to see it. I was pretty busy Sunday, so
I didn't see it either. I saw the score. That's an
it
outrageous score.
It's like playing a video game. But yeah, it's just I'm having a terrible fantasy. I don't really care about real football. Care more about fantasy football. And I am having dreadful season.
This is the problem with fantasy football. It ruins real football.
So,
no, not really. I mean, no.
So I saw something pretty interesting, and it was Peyton Manning and his, I don't know, his fake handoff to a guy rushing. Yes,
that was amazing,
dude. It was incredible.
Sold the leg.
Oh
yes,
the pictures of him running into the end zone. There's no one else in the picture.
Yeah, he faked a handoff, and he hasn't run one in for a touchdown. And they said in like
it's 5 years.
Yes. Very long time.
That helps to sell.
Right.
That helps to sell the bootleg.
Nobody saw it coming. It was incredible. You should go.
I haven't seen anything.
Yeah.
All I saw was the score of that game. I thought of you because I know you're a Cowboys fan.
Yeah, I'm still.
So listen, I'm over here rocking my Windows 8 machine to the right of my Apple here.
I'm sorry.
And I hate to say this. I don't want to.
Oh, wait a minute.
I don't want to dog anyone too bad, but I keep trying to give Windows 8 just a decent shot, and it is a nightmare.
You should grab your camera and just hold that over there and explain to everybody.
No, I can't. I don't have enough time, man. Windows 8 is a nightmare. So if you go out and you buy a new machine, more than likely it's going to have Windows 8 on it. And so here's what we recommend. There are third-party applications like SkyDoc has something that basically just restores it to where it looks like Windows 7, gives you a start button. This is another program I know that you use.
Yeah,
you remember it?
Oh goodness, you put me on the spot.
Yeah,
it's like Shell something or other. I can't remember what it is, but it brings the whole start menu stuff back. And let me just say, I don't live in a Windows world, so that's why I couldn't tell you right off the bat.
We are living in a material world. I'm sorry. We want to tell you about Matthew DePrez's book, Join Generations. It's a free ebook. It's a free ebook right now. You can go get it at joingenerations.com. All you have to do is enter your email. They won't spam you, and they'll send you a free ebook copy of that book. And also, coming up in a few weeks, we've got Mark Batterson's going to be on. You can pick up his new book, All In, at thetechologyshow.com/shop, which TG's going to tell you a little bit more about that today. And today, our guest, in just a moment, is going to be David Drury. We're talking about his new book, Being Dad, and as you can see, it's a real book. We've got one to give away. And TG, tell everybody how they can go on Amazon and support the show and get great resources.
Yeah, you heard it in a bumper at the start of the show, but a way that you can help us out is by doing your Amazon shopping by starting at our website. When you do that, it gives us a cut. About 4 to 6% of whatever you'd spend at Amazon comes back to us.
That's right.
And that is awesome for us. It's such a huge help because we literally run this show out of our own pocket. So when it comes time to buy new equipment, to buy new cameras, to keep this show coming to you, to re-register our domain names, all that kind of good stuff, it takes money, and that is a great way to help us. So especially as we start getting towards the Christmas season. As you go to our website, you're going to see right there on the page, it's a little image that looks like this, support the show. You can click that, and it's just going to throw you over to Amazon, and that's all you've got to do.
Yes.
That's it. In fact, if you have Amazon bookmarked, you could actually change your bookmark link to where the link is thetechologyshow.com/shop. I did that to a friend of ours who's been on the show one time, Paul Brown, on his computer. He has an Amazon link there on his desktop.
Yeah.
And I said, Paul, do you mind if I do something here? And I told him what it was, and I put our link. So now anytime he opens up Amazon, he's going to go through our show.
It's huge for us.
Yeah,
man.
and some of you have already done that. You've already started supporting us and helping us. We've seen some of that in the reporting that we get back on that, and it helps over time. So if you shop at Amazon.com, it costs nothing for you, but it has a benefit for us if you start your shopping by going to thetechologyshow.com/shop.
As Heath said, our guest today is David Drury. Dave is the author or co-author of a half dozen books, including Being Dad, Soul Shift, Ageless Faith, Duckville, and The Fruitful Life. He serves as the chief of staff to Dr. Joanne Lyon, General Superintendent of the Wesleyan Church. He previously served as a local church pastor in 5 congregations in the Midwest as a church planter, solo pastor, or staff pastor in urban, suburban, and rural settings. He is a graduate of Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary and Indiana Wesleyan University. Dave, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you guys. You always say you're from rural Pickens, and here I am in Gas City, Indiana.
Nice name.
So I was at a conference here, the Reequipped conference, and I snuck away to get back to my house right near here, and where I knew I'd get a landline.
All right. Well, it's great having you on the show. We do want to discuss your new book, Being Dad. I had the opportunity to read that this weekend and thoroughly enjoyed it. David, this is a manuscript you started working on before you yourself became a father. So tell our listeners how this book came about.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a funny placement. I think this is the 7th book I've published, but it was the first one I wrote. So for those people that are writers or do any kind of creation, especially something that might be published, it's kind of an interesting story because I wrote it in 99, believe it or not, when my wife was pregnant with our first son. And so the mode I'm in this book was, oh my goodness, my wife's going to have a baby. I'm going to be a dad. What do I do? And I was thinking that through, and I thought, I had a dad that was just very intentional, and I thought, I should do that. And what I had actually done is I had told stories about him through the years, and I was actually with a guy out in Boston, and this guy, we were sharing stories, and he said, Dave, you need to write all these stories down. And I thought that was a good idea, so I did. Along the way, I told the stories. I was actually pitching several book ideas to an editor years ago, and I think I even pitched like 4 different book ideas, and several of those have been published since then. But this editor, who was kind of a junior editor named Kevin at the time, he actually remembered it from way back when and said, Dave, did you ever publish that with anybody else? And he actually pursued me to put it into print, and I'm thankful for him. He was the editor in the book. Of the book, and did a great job sort of capturing that. And so anyway, that the frame of mind that I wrote it in was as this young, about to be a dad guy, but then I kind of used all these years in between to polish it and make it better and improve it and so forth. So it feels I'm really proud of where it landed.
Now, first of all, we probably want you to go through and stress what this book is not trying to do or be.
Yeah, I mean, because I know a lot of people pick up a parenting book and a fatherhood book, and they might feel a little bit of trepidation. They might be like, is this going to make me feel guilty?
Yeah.
Or sometimes they, have a book, like here's another book, Welcome the Stranger. I highly recommend it. But anyway, a lot of times you get a fatherhood book, and it'll have like on the back a big giant picture of the ultimate father. That is not me. This book is not about me, and I think that's part of it. Just for people watching and listening, I think we all want to become better parents. Even if our kids are grown, we want to be better parent to our grown kids or our grandkids, or even if we haven't had children, we might someday, and we want to think that through. And so the way I look at it is we earn our first degree for parenthood during childhood. And we all can become experts at parenting, but we got to start. We got to start by evaluating. Well, how was I raised? And when we don't do that, I think we get on a trajectory, where we start to just sort of rehash things and do things over and over again that our parents did wrong, or even things they did right, but we don't really own them ourselves. And so become our own person. It's not really about me being a great dad. It's about raising the value of parenthood. David Wright, the new president of Indiana Wesleyan University, when he was talking about this subject in my book, he said, really, this is about raising the nobility of fatherhood. And I love that concept because it's maybe a value we lost, for generations now. Fathers are maybe not valued like they once were, and maybe we valued them in unhealthy ways in the past, but I really want to see us raise our value of what fathers can do and what they can be, and how every single father out there can have a huge impact on their children.
At one point in the book, you say, quote, 2 of the greatest barriers to becoming a better person are guilt and fear. Expound on that, and especially as it relates to being a dad.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess guilt and fear both have their purpose, right? We need to fear some things that are truly dangerous, and guilt is what convicts us to change.
Sure.
So it's not guilt and fear, maybe both neutral. It's more what we do with them. And I think with guilt, if we don't repent, if we don't change, if we don't have any sense of I need to change, and if we don't have conviction, and then if we don't seek forgiveness, then it becomes shame. And I think shame is immobilizing. And I think all of us just kind of get stuck when we feel shame, when somebody's putting on shame on us. And frankly, I think a lot of men live in shame, and it's very demotivating. And I would say many fathers father in shame, and they shame their children in ways that they don't want to do, but they just are sort of stuck in this. And so part of what has been interesting for me is just to think about how do I move past that thinking, and then also not leading and parenting in fear, because I think when you lead, I mean, I have this in just a leadership role as a pastor and as a church leader. When I lead and then when I parent out of fear, it just becomes reactionary leadership and reactionary parenting.
Yeah.
And we do this, I mean, make it real simple. My 10-year-old daughter, I could have a real fear that she's going to become like her grandmother, or that my son's going to become like me, or that some pattern. And sometimes we end up reacting against that history instead of putting it in its proper, humble place of not too great so that it becomes an idol, and not too low that it becomes a devil. And I think we all, I mean, even my, writing about my dad, I could end up turning him into a god. And he's not a god, he's a man. And he makes tons of mistakes, and he did not parent me perfectly. Nobody can. But it's kind of looking at that. And so in a sense, I'm asking us all to step away from the way we were raised, evaluate that a little bit, and say, okay, how am I going to do this intentionally and be a dad on purpose for the next generation?
Yeah, Dave, I just thinking here, I imagine your experience in ministry is pretty close to mine, in that when you begin to discuss fear and shame, that they seem to just kind of feed off of one another and become a black hole.
That is well said. Yeah, they do, because a lot of times we have fear launches us into a shame cycle, and sometimes shame, we because we feel all this shame, we have a fear that somebody will find out. So it's all this kind of secrecy thing.
Your book breaks down into 3 sections. Could you briefly describe each of those and tell why you chose this kind of breakdown for your book?
Well, it's nothing all that inventive. It's more chronological, and in some ways that might help somebody engage it depending on how old their kids are. But it's just the early years, the growth years, the peer years. The early years, I think the dynamic I was trying to notice in the way I was raised was, man, you just can mold those children at those early years so much. And at the time, we sometimes forget how much having cereal and watching cartoons with our 4-year-old means, right? We don't think of that as major dad time and parenting time in general. Because a lot of this applies for mothers, of course. we don't think of it that way, but it is. And just that time with them and molding them in those early years, and as they're an elementary kid, doing homework with them, going on vacation with them, man, they're just so moldable. And if you think about our own childhoods, and as I did in this, I'm so molded by those early years. And then the sort of the growth years, they're just years that fly by. All of us that have kids that are growing out of their genes, that are, having to get new sports equipment every year, that, you have to get a new bed because they can't even fit in it anymore. Those years that go so fast, man, you have to have some intentionality to make sure you don't miss it, because all of a sudden you look over the room and you're like, oh my goodness, that my kid's shaving. What happened to my little boy? Or, oh, my little girl's going to the prom. Oh my goodness. And so we all have those experiences as parents. And I think looking at that from the other end, I like how my dad did some things that just were intentional. He didn't have a lot of time, but he scheduled stuff. He did things that he planned out. And he wasn't, like a robot. He didn't do the same thing all the time. He mixed it up. But I think that word intentionality, of having a bit of an intention, a purpose, and a plan, can be really helpful. And then finally, the peer years, which, Tony, you're really in. Once your kids get to late teens and into adulthood, it's hard. That's a hard transition, because then you're starting to say, okay, how do I relate to this kid I can't control anymore? And there's various stages in adolescence where that gets to. And so for me, I just reflecting a lot on, how did my dad move into kind of the peer years, being such a big influence on me? How did he become, in a way, a diminished influence on me that was still important?
Dave, I love stories, and I found myself at times laughing, especially when you talk about your trips, the family trips in the car with your brother in the back seat. Also found myself at times just on the verge of tears. The brief narratives, and you have these all the way throughout the book. They have a way of just kind of pulling you in. So our listeners can get a feel of the flow of this book. Tell one of the stories that you present in the book, and then the principle that it led you to.
Yeah, boy, I could tell so many, and a lot aren't, even in there. I guess for me, one of the first ones I've told, and it is when I was a little kid. My dad was out mowing the lawn, and I was just a little tiny tot, and he's out there working in the garden and then mowing the lawn, and he's all sweaty and all dirty because he'd just been working in the garden. And what I love to do is actually go pick cherry tomatoes out in the garden and eat them. And I saw my dad, and for some reason I'm like, I need to do something for him. So I went inside. It's the first time I've done this, and I flipped. We had that one-armed bandit of a faucet. I flipped it up, probably decidedly to the lukewarm side, and I grabbed a glass out of the dirty dish pile, a milky, glass, and then I had dirty hands because I was playing in the garden and eating cherry tomatoes, and so I filled up this, glass with lukewarm, milky, floaty-filled water, and I carried it out to my dad, who was mowing the lawn, and I toddled up and lifted it up to him, and he stopped the mower and looked at me, and I lifted it up, and I that was the best I could do, right? To offer to him, and he had a decision right then, right, to either, tell me, what are you doing? You don't even know how to get me a glass of water, kind of a thing, or to do what he did, which was to drink that down. Now, I don't know whether he spit it out after I was looking, or puked or what, but I do think that we tend to sometimes, the principle that I saw in that was, there are moments where we need to react. We react to the behavior of our kids instead of responding to what they need. And I use those two terms to kind of point out that a lot of times in the moment, when something happens that our kid does, we react to it in a way that might make sense, but it isn't what they need. And so intentionality is not necessarily having a big master strategic plan for parenting. Oh my goodness, we don't need that. What we need is a sensitivity to what do they need. And in that moment, now, if I was 15 and I brought him out a milky, floaty-filled, lukewarm glass of water, what would I need? Right? I wouldn't need him to drink it and sort of placate me like helicopter parents do. Instead, he would need to say, hey, Dave, can I show you how to get ice cubes out and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Because this is the worst glass of water I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, in fact,
I think that kind of is the principle I draw out of that.
yeah, and in fact, you get you get into later on in the book times when your dad had those age-appropriate conversations with you, where he was saying, "Hey, wait a minute, your behavior is beneath where you should be at this particular moment in your life." Yeah. So, yeah, you see it both ways.
Absolutely.
There.
A lot of those peer years, I think, are when a lot of that starts to happen as all of us have teenagers and so forth. I only have a 13-year-old as my oldest. And so, I haven't experienced a lot of that yet. So again, it's not about me being the expert in that.
Sure.
And you know more about that than I do, Tony. But again, I can look back at how I was raised and learn some of those principles before I have to apply them, which is the best time to learn them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, David, there's a question from the chat room I want to ask you. Can this book relate or speak to people that didn't have a dad in their lives? And if so, how do you think it could do that?
Well, the motivation, I mentioned the guy in Boston I was sitting with who said, write the book. He said that because he grew up with a dad completely absent from his life. And then another one of my best friends left his home when he was just one, and he never talked to him again until he was an adult.
Wow.
And those guys really, I always thought those guys wouldn't want to hear my stories, but they were the ones that wanted to hear them.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to know, okay, how would that work? And particularly, I think for boys that weren't raised with a father, it's hard for them to know what to imitate and what not to imitate. So they sort of feel like they're creating it on their own. And I think girls that didn't have a mother have the same thing. And so I think we're drawn in a way to do that and to hear some of those stories. So what I'm sharing is just simple stuff. It's not super complex,
right,
that I think all dads can do to just be intentional.
Right.
David, let me be a cheerleader for this book and say, I think that anyone could read this book and benefit from it. So it could be moms, grandmoms, grandfathers, but I already have in my mind a list of young men who are young fathers, one who's not even a father yet, but, those days are coming. And so if I could make a passion plea, especially for those, you're a young father, sit down and read this book. And here's why I say it. If you don't grab anything else out of the book, one of the things that just floats to the surface, and I'm sure this is intentional on your part, is how intentional your own father was about his parenting towards his boys and things that were planned out. And you can tell at some points in the book where, your dad really had thought this out. He wasn't reacting. And again, it's not to lift Keith up as the perfect father, which you've already spoke to that, but just how intentional. And there were times I cringed in the book, but I cringed in a good way. And so while I felt condemned at some points, I also felt affirmed, because as I got older, I got a lot more intentional about some things and have become way more intentional now. And so, man, if you're listening to our podcast, if you're a young father, get a hold of this. If you're older and you have a son and they're going to be leaving the nest soon, man, give them this book. They might not read it tomorrow, but it is something that they'll put away, and when they become a father, maybe they'll grab it off the shelf.
Yeah.
And what I would say to that, Tony, is it's never too late to be the turnaround generation.
Yep.
The reality is I barely knew my grandfather because he died when I was 12, but many of the things my dad did were really, he was just imitating what his dad did. So if he was on this, that's what he would say. He could have written a book about him. And who knows how far that goes back. I have a suspicion that it started with Walter, even my grandfather's dad, who was the first Christian man in his home. And and so what I would say is I have the benefit of being a fourth generation intentional child, a child that was intentionally parented.
Yeah.
And but we all can be that turnaround generation. And how much more glory might God give that person who decides to turn around, even if there's somebody whose kid has a kid already, and they say, "Man, I wish I was a better dad." If you sat on a pickup truck with your son, any of us, when we're 65, and said, "You know what? I really wish I was a better dad for you," but just so you know, I'm super proud of you. There's no kid in the world where that would not be a turnaround moment for them.
You got it, yeah.
And any, father or mother would say that to a daughter. When they get married, you're already done with all your job. They're getting married. To be able to say at the wedding, I wanted to be a better dad for you, or mom for you, but I'm so proud of you, and I feel like you turned out great. Those moments can be the start of a turnaround generation.
Absolutely.
And no matter how old we are, we can be that person.
Yeah. Dave, let's leave the book for a moment and talk about this technology savvy age. In your opinion, how can busy dads use technology to their advantage when it comes to engaging with their kids?
Yeah, I was actually just interacting with Brian Purvis, who's a military chaplain. He was talking a lot about all the men he works with, and some women that are in the military and away from their family so much. How do they do that? And I was, again, remembering something my dad did. My dad actually traveled tons when I was growing up. So I grew up with a dad that was not just busy job, but literally out of the country much of the year. And he did a couple things. One is he limited it to 100 nights a year, which is, when you think about it, still a ton of travel, because for every night there's usually 2 days. So you're talking more than half of the year him being gone, right? Out of town. And so there was that. He limited it so that it wasn't 300 days a year. The second thing was he actually, I think using the technology available, when I was a kid, cassettes had just come out. You remember this?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And he took one of those little tape recorders. You remember the ones that have a handle on it, and you put the tape in there, and he would record it. And what he did is he took my favorite book, children's book, and because he wasn't there when he was traveling to read the stories to me at night before bed, and he recorded himself reading that entire book. I still have the tape. It's like prized possession. And I just don't have anywhere to play it because it's cassette tape, right? But I ended up, I think that's an example of, that was cassettes. Well, what do I use today? I think, we've got to figure out what are our kids using today. Oh, my video's off. You guys see me?
Well, we see a picture. There we are. There we are. We got you back.
Okay. We need to think about what is the technology to use today. Skype, like we're using right now. I think people are using that technology, texting, social media. We need to find ways to use these. One of the principles I would say is just make a little added effort. That's all my dad did, recording that. It didn't take any longer for him to record that than it did to read it live to me with me. But it was just a little bit of added effort. I think another principle would be shoulder time, finding out what technology your kids are using and use it to connect with them. So if your kids are text crazy, text them. If they, they love social media, find a way to do that appropriately without embarrassing all their friends. For me, my kids are all into games. So my son loves Minecraft.
Oh my!
So here I am. I'd rather be sitting on my computer doing a whole lot of other things. But guess what? I am awesome at Minecraft because he will sit on his computer over here on the other side of the room, and I'll sit on mine, and we will. It's called shoulder time because we're doing the same thing together. Yeah. And so I have had fun conversations with my son, literally typing in the chat in Minecraft. My daughter loves The Sims.
Dude. So on Minecraft, what mode do you play on Minecraft? Do you do the survival mode or the build mode?
All of them. We know all of them.
Okay.
Survival, all that stuff.
I can remember.
Well, he loves PvP where you fight the other people online.
Right.
And I just go in and I'm like cannon fodder.
I can remember trying to get my dad to do that. He gets so aggravated with it, what button does what? I just can't understand this.
That's why I love
my daughter loves The Sims on the iPad. And so, she loves to get it to where they all have to go to the bathroom, and then she sends in the bathroom, and then you make little gardens and all that little stuff. So all this, we both have it on 2 different iPads things, and so she helps me do it. And so, so some of that shoulder time, and then I really just think it's back to intentionality. It's saying what are they using, and knowing when to back away. Like my son and I had an arrangement that I could talk about him on social media until he turned 13. And then now that he's 13, I can't say anything about him that I don't get approved by him on social media. So I can't Instagram his goofy looking face when he's asleep. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's why if I ever talk about him, it says Max Drury approved this message.
Nice.
Anyway, I'm not saying I've got all that figured out. I'm just, saying I do think intentionality, shoulder time, and a little added extra effort can help us connect via technology.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Dave, before we let you go, talk about some of your other books. Some people might not realize, what some of your other books are about. We mentioned them at the top of the show, but just take a second and highlight those.
Well, I mean, at this point, I've got a lot of books out there. You can find them. It's not that hard. You can go to my website and stuff. I guess when I'm a writer, and I love being able to give somebody something portable they can take and kind of so they can be transformed and so they can become closer to God and others and the world around them. And that's the neat thing about writing. I was just talking to a guy who wrote his first book just this morning, and he was talking about how somebody in another state met a homeless lady who was out on the street crying, and she was reading his book. Yeah. And he had that moment where it was like, oh my goodness, this homeless lady in another state is being impacted by the things I wrote. So that's a neat thing about a book, is it kind of becomes this portable thing other people take and do with it as they will. And it really isn't about me anymore. So for me, I mean, my mantra when I write is I want to write with heart and humor, and I want to take myself less seriously and God more seriously, and I want the reader to do the same thing. And so all of my books and anything else I write should have that flavor to it, and I just hope it can be a real influence on people to point them to God and others and to the world.
All right. Well, Dave, always a pleasure to be with you, man. Just appreciate what you're doing at the Wesleyan headquarters. Yeah. Love this book, and we're going to do our best to get the word out about it.
Well, thanks so much. You guys are such a blast to be with. It was great to be down there and see you all in person last year. So can I pray for you guys a second?
We would love for you to do that.
Lord, we thank you for everybody involved today in the Techology Show and all those people who might listen to this or watch it later on. We pray that you be with all of us as we're seeking to be a better influence on the next generation, whether it's a baby in the crib or our grandkids, or maybe we don't have any kids and we just want to influence young people around us and mentor them and shape them and teach them. Lord, may we be raising up a next generation that feels the sense of our intentionality, that even if we don't do it perfect, and it's pretty much guaranteed none of us is going to do it perfect. My dad didn't do it, I didn't do it perfect, I'm still not doing it perfect. But they're going to know we really cared, and they're going to know we did it on purpose, and then we're going to know that we did it because of you. So I pray that you be with the rest of the show today and the Techology thing as it continues to be a little bit of a phenomenon. Bless these guys as they take so much of their time to help spread the word about things that people need to hear about. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Now get back to the Reequipped conference and keep live tweeting that stuff, because that was good yesterday. All the Weitzel quotes.
I don't know. Now that I'm home, I might just play Minecraft with Matt. No, I better get back there. Bye, guys.
All right, bye-bye.
See you, bro.
Yeah.
Again, that is David Drury. His book is Being Dad, and you can win a copy by going to thetechologyshow.com/giveaway. You can check David out on Twitter at David Drury, daviddrury.com. And then if you want more information about his book, it's beingdadbook.com. Good resources there. And it's something when you can get Max Lucado to put the quote on in front of your book. I mean, he's written some books himself.
Yeah. David is being humble about the books that he's co-authored or authored. The Soul Shift is a great book. Yeah. Our church went through that, actually. Pastor Matthew did a whole preaching series on it. We did it in Sunday school. Would highly recommend it for that. It's a great book. And Ageless Faith is David and his dad.
Yeah. That's one of the.
Hey, listen, we're going to switch things up a little bit. We're not going to do our regular intro to Download of the Week because it's going to flow out of They Said It. So let's go ahead. And
I cannot find. There it is.
There it is.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or HGH.
I took the initiative in creating the internet.
The Macintosh
of all the machines I've ever seen, it is the only one that meets that standard.
Well, I'm not a crook.
If you know what you're doing here, slide out.
There may be circumstances in which termination of pregnancy on grounds of fetal sex would be lawful. The British Medical Association, in a statement issued to doctors in the UK, source The Telegraph.
The surprising statements are actually supposed to show that Microsoft is trying to work with partners and security companies across the world as much as possible, with Security Essentials holding a key role in this collaboration. Bogdan Popa reporting on Microsoft's recent admission that Microsoft Security Essentials consistently ranks at the bottom of the list when it comes to security software for PCs. Source, Softpedia.
The key to successfully engaging unchurched people in a weekend message has more to do with your approach and your presentation than your content. Andy Stanley discussing what he believes ought to be the agenda when preaching to both the unchurched and the church. Source, Deep and Wide.
The frugal person gets the best bang for the buck, or better yet, doesn't spend the buck at all if the thing isn't really needed. However, as good as frugality is, it is not by itself a virtue. Materialists can be frugal while only saving up more for themselves. Indeed, most misers are frugal. Frugality is good only if placed in the service of generosity. Keith Drury, writing on the spiritual discipline of simplicity. Source, Soul Shaper. All right, here. So, Heath, you sent. I think it was you that sent me the story from the Telegraph. And
very scary stuff.
Yeah, what makes me happy about this story is there is an uproar and outrage over it.
Yes.
To me, there's nothing more narcissistic than you would, and self-centered, as to have an abortion because the child is the wrong sex. You're wanting a little girl, and it's going to be a boy, therefore.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, this is a lot more widespread than people realize. There's a lot of countries where, there's a child limit. A lot of communist countries where that happens, and this, we speak out against abortion so much because we see that this is where it's heading in America as well. That people want that freedom, that for no reason other than, well, it's a boy and I want a girl, we're just going to, have the abortion.
My understanding in reading the article that part of the alarm here is that even among pro-choice people, there's been this idea, well, this is taking it too far.
Right.
The alarm is that you have in the UK now this whole argument that's building to say, well, that's it's not necessarily a deal breaker, and one could get an abortion on the basis of the sex of the child, and so. One of those things that as believers at any point we can speak into this, we ought to speak into it and speak against it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. This next one here, Microsoft Security Essentials. So this is...
Which is an oxymoron.
When it first came out, if you read the article, when Microsoft Security Essentials first came out, it was like number one. It was at the top of the list. And I loved it.
They came out of the gate strong on that, and everybody else was just a resource hog at the time. I mean, you had like Norton and
dear.
Well, AVG is what I was using at the time, but it aggravated me sometimes.
Yeah, they would always like, you need to buy. We want you to buy the upgraded version. And so here comes Microsoft with their own thing, free out of the gates, and they've just not kept up with it. Yeah. And now, sadly, it is not doing well. Yeah. And when I think back, it makes me sad because, goodness, in the past 5 years, that's all I've ever encouraged people to put on their Windows machines is Microsoft Security Essentials. And now it's time to talk about something different.
Yeah, so for our download of the week,
download.
Nice.
Yay!
Hey! So, Matthew, what would you recommend?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I have to recommend something that others recommend. And so the blog Lifehacker, they're recommended version is Avast, which has it has a Windows version. Avast even makes a Mac antivirus stuff now, as well as if you have an Android phone. I don't think it's super necessary to do, but there are some cool things you can do, like locking down certain applications on your phone using Avast for Android. But that's what they recommend. I mostly trust, I guess, the guys behind the Lifehackers blog. So that's, I mean, from this point on, that's kind of where I'll be until I hear about something different. Yeah. So
the reality is that for all of us on the show here, we use Macs, and we're just not in a Microsoft world a whole lot. I get there once in a while, but not regularly. So we recommend Avast, and if you have something out there that you think is better, let us know, and we'll recommend
And Avast
it.
is going to be, it's going to kind of be like going back to AVG a little bit. There's going to be some things that they're going to try to upsell you on, but they have a free basic, and they say, I mean, Lifehacker says of everything that they've tested, and they've tested AVG, they've tested Norton and run it against everything else, and they feel like it catches the most problems. It uses for what it catches and the kind of resources it uses on your computer, that it's right where you need to be. So there you go. Have fun.
All right, our next quote, interesting one from Andy Stanley in his book, this book right here, Deep and Wide. We link you to that in our show notes. Is this a book you've read?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was in a part of a coaching network, and that was one of the books they gave us. And let me just say,
he'll rock your world. I mean, he's going to make you.
Yeah.
He'll make you mad. He'll challenge you.
To me, the book is worth the purchase. And I'll be honest, I haven't read the whole thing. Just to read the part of the relationship with his dad and how North Point Church came about, and just kind of a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and his relationship with his father, his parents' marriage. So many. I mean,
it's amazing how much he tells with his dad's permission.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and his dad writes the foreword to the book, and it is just, I mean, if you have followed Charles or Andy Stanley for any length of time, it is powerful. I remember weeping as I was reading how broken their relationship became, but then you see the healing that comes, and it is just it's just a powerful Well, the
quote that I grabbed out of the book, we could fill up 5 pages of quotes. But this one has potential to be controversial. He says, the key to successfully engaging an unchurched people in a weekend message has more to do with your approach and your presentation than your content. Now, I can hear people at the Theological Academy right now just absolutely setting off fireworks. But here's my challenge to you. Go to their website, download some of Andy's messages. I'm going to tell you what. They're content heavy. Yeah. And he smacks people with the gospel of Christ. I mean, there's a challenge with that. But he raises some great points just about in terms of engaging unchurched people and our approach to it and our presentation. And his point is this. You can have all the content right and bore a congregation absolutely to death. And it can be irrelevant to the unchurched person.
Yeah, and the key word in this quote is engaging. Right. He's talking about the engagement part, and he's not saying that you engage people at the expense of the content.
Of truth.
And if you've read his book...
I've not read that one.
His book on preaching, man, I can't remember.
I haven't read it, so I can't help you.
If you go to thetechnologyshow.com/shop and look on Amazon, type in Andy Stanley's name. One of his books is on preaching.
Since you bring that up, our showroom, we have people making purchases on Amazon right now. I'm not going to name names, but the chat room declares that jeans have been bought during jeans have been bought during this. And here's the earnings report. Okay, so here's our earnings report for last month. We can't. Unless you tell us, there's no way that we can know who bought what. All right. But Transformers, Dark of the Moon, Lost Autobot, Passport to Reading Level 2. was bought through our affiliate link, so thank you whoever did
Yes.
that. A copy of Mark Batterson's All In was bought using our affiliate link. So
Awesome.
yeah, awesome. Thank you. And then this week, in fact, hold on, last 7 days.
Are we above
display on
$1?
page. Oh yes. Then this week, somebody bought They Killed Our President, 63 Facts That Prove a Conspiracy to Kill JFK.
By Jesse Ventura. Great book. That book's so good.
No way. Hey, man, oh man. I don't know you, man. I do not know you.
It's because it's the 50th anniversary. The new movie Parkland's coming out.
Jesse Ventura. Oh my word.
For president.
All right, let's get back.
Dear. Yeah, get this show back on track.
Yeah, let's get back to deep and wide here. One of the things that struck me, I pulled this out of a section where you begin to realize, we talked about with David, intentionally fathering.
Yeah.
You talk about intentionality with unchurched people. It starts when they drive into the parking lot. So, I mean, the experience is thought out.
Yeah.
From that moment all the way through. My guess is you would see this kind of philosophy at 12 Stone.
Right.
I mean, there are a number of churches. I don't want to just raise his church as the only one doing that. You're not going to agree with everything in this book. There are things that I take issue with, but I'm going to tell you, he's going to make you think. Yeah. And he's just going to challenge you on areas of ministry that you need to be challenged.
At the New Spring Leadership Conference, which was a year ago, he spoke on, his topic was on preaching to unchurched people, and it was just very good. Just some of the tips he gave about, and he said something that was fairly, controversial. He talked about that the main message of the gospel is Jesus, that, someone doesn't have to believe in, you don't have to get people to believe in Adam and Eve before they're saved. That's something that can come later.
He discusses that in this book as well. Yeah. My guess is the seminar took a lot of these things. If you're a busy person and you don't have time to just read, but you have a time in traveling to work and stuff like that, this book is on audible.com. I recommend Audible. I recommend a membership to it. It's $14.95 a month. When I came back from Chicago on my last trip, I listened to 2 books on my way back. One was Mark Batterson's book, All In. The other was Surfing for God by Michael Cusick. And for me, that's a great way of just redeeming that time. And with audible.com, they have just a little tab there called bookmarks. Every time there's something interesting, I just hit bookmark on that. I also buy the Kindle version. I go back later and I just highlight that. So highly recommend that for you.
No joke. I have another purchase on Amazon. That's great. This one I'm going to throw up on the screen for you. Let's see if I can make it work.
Oh, yeah.
Shake away cat repellent granules.
Nice.
Yes. Thank you. Keep using the Amazon affiliate link.
That's good. All right. Our last quote here.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Our last quote. I'll just read the last line of this. This is from Keith Drury. This one line is worth the purchase of the book. Frugality is good only if placed in the service of generosity.
Yes.
Get Keith Drury's books, Soul Shaper. This is about spiritual disciplines, and then if you want the companion book with that, the one that Wesleyan Publishing House just put out, Together, and it's about corporate spiritual disciplines. Wonderful book. I'm actually using the book and walking through it with a different person. We're using it as accountability, and just really good stuff. Heath, what are you laughing about over there? Are you playing?
Because people are wanting to support our show. They're putting links in the chat room of things to buy, and one of them was a chainmail night outfit. So Halloween's coming up.
I think what they're wanting to do is think of the wackiest things to buy, so that we'll talk about them on the show.
Yeah, at some point we won't be able to put on this screen.
Exactly. At some point, one of you's going to buy something that we can't show.
Yeah, can't.
And someone in the chat room, not going to mention any names, Priscilla, but they have confessed to buying the cat Cataway, whatever that stuff.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Oh.
See, that caught Matthew off guard.
Yeah, it did.
All right, hey, let's talk about what's coming up in the future.
Man, so much stuff coming up in the future.
Yeah, we're almost booked solid all right through Christmas. So next week, talk a little bit about next week, Heath.
The Wesleyan Church, I'm so excited to announce this. The Wesleyan Church is the first denomination in the world. We are partnering with a group called Biblica.
Dude, they're the first denomination in the galaxy.
The first denomination in the universe to partner with Biblica and to be a part of Biblica's community Bible experience. And so next spring during the Lent season, the entire Wesleyan denomination is going to be reading through the New Testament together. If you want to find out more information, you can go to 40daybible.com. And you can sign up for email updates on that, get more information. We're going to be sending a lot of information about that. But next week, we're having Jeremy Summers from Headquarters, who's kind of heading all of this up and working with me, and Kenny Jang, who's actually working with Biblica. And they're going to be on the show with us and tell us how it works, why are we doing this, just to promote it, because the goal is to get literally thousands and thousands of Wesleyans involved in it. Man, can you imagine if our whole denomination is reading the New Testament?
But
during
it goes
that
beyond
time?
our denomination too. I mean, if you're not part of the Wesleyan Church, you want to get.
Oh, right, yeah. I mean, this is something any church can do.
Yeah.
Churches all across the world have done it. It's just that we are the first denomination to do it, to promote it denomination wide, and I'm excited to be a part of that. It's going to be phenomenal.
Also coming up in the future, we have Dr. Bob Weitzel. We've had him on a couple other times. We'll be talking about his book, The Healthy Church. Evan Money, who's working on a documentary. It's inspirational, and Evan Money is just an inspirational, motivational speaker, and so this documentary is about that. It has people like Zig Ziglar, Mark Batterson, and others. And speaking of Mark Batterson, we will be having our interview with him on November the 5th, talking about his book, All In. Let me tell you something that I'm very excited about. December the 17th, we just had confirmed last week that Michael Cusick will be with us. He is the author of Surfing for God, and would just say this, that I just so recommend this because he's dealing with the issue of internet pornography. That's going to be one of those episodes where, it's very adult in nature and in its content, but so much needed. And especially if you're in ministry, you are either dealing with people who have this as an issue, or you're ignoring people who have this issue.
Good way to put it.
Yeah, it's huge. And so, man, mark that one on your calendar, September or December the 17th, Michael Cusick, Surfing for God. All right, one more time here. Don't forget our giveaway, Being Dad by David Drury.
It'll be up on the show site, thetechologyshow.com/giveaway.
All right, Heath, where can our listeners find you?
HeathMullican.com, Heath Mullican on Twitter, Heath Mullican on Facebook, Heath Mullican wherever there's a Heath Mullican.
And you can find me at MatthewTG.com, where you'll just see my smiling face. Not much has changed there.
I'm at AKC64 at both Twitter and Facebook. If you want to do further research on anything we discussed today, you can find all the links to the story we covered at our website, thetechologyshow.com. If you want to contact us, you can send your emails to thetechologyshow@gmail.com, or better yet, call us up at 3049-TEOLOGY. Leave us a voicemail. We may even play your comments on the air. As always, thanks for joining us. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
See you later.
What? No audios? What?
Adios.
Thank you. You can't end the show without it, man.